Okay, hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon's training session on Dynamics GP Supplier Payment Run and Emailing Remittances. It's presented by the wonderful Sharon Keegan. I can see that we've got Alex and Connor here. There's one more of you, but it just says waiting for name. So if you could, if at all possible, type your name in the chat box so we know who you are, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So I'll just go through a couple of housekeeping slides. So the session is being recorded. If you could please set your line to mute so we don't get any background noise, but then obviously if you do have a question, please feel free to unmute your line to ask anything. Please be interactive. It's obviously a training session. We want you to or yourself and ask in person, or whether you type it in the chat box. We'll made Sharon very happy in the last training session because he did ask a couple of questions. So Alex, no pressure, but if you could come up with a question, that'd be fab. We do welcome any feedback, and the recording that we're making is being sent to the delegates of this session only, so don't worry about it being sent elsewhere. And this is just a list of a few more webinars and events that we've got coming up later in this month and later in the year. So obviously there's Power BI on there, Dynamics GP System Admin, Business Central. So it's obviously a few customers are choosing to move to the cloud and going to the Business Central route. Dynamics GP Smart List and back to basics with the Dynamics GP. And we'll just pop that list up again at the end, I think. But I will hand over to Sharon now.
Thanks, Jenna. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just come out of this and go into GP. So, as Jenna said, today's training is just on supplier payment runs, remittance emailing, that kind of thing. If you do have questions, please ask them. You can unmute yourself to ask, type in the message box. If you don't ask, it's a bit like presenting a radio show and being afraid there's nobody out there listening without the benefit of music to break up the periods of talking. So yeah, give my voice a break and ask questions. And thanks, Alex. I'm expecting a couple of questions now. I'm not sure how long each of you are using Great Plains, but I'll assume that you do know. If you don't, just, like I said, put up your hand and ask. So our supplier payments, there's a couple of ways of recording supplier payments in GP. I'm going to be concentrating in the purchase ledger. You can record manual payments, and those really are more to record things that have happened. So rather than to be actually proactive and generate payments. So we'd record those under manual payments. I'm not going to do those today unless you actually need to see it and you don't know how to do them. But those are recording things that may have happened, like a direct debit may have happened. It's not something you need a remittance for. You're not going in to pay lots of different invoices maybe. So you just record manual payments. It happened. You go in, you tick, you apply. So what we're going to be focusing on are the payment batches. Now, I'm referring to them here as payment batches. I'm on version 18.3 of GP. If you were on GP 2016 or earlier, you will see on your screen, instead of build payment batch, you've got select checks and so on. They've just changed the naming convention to make it kind of more accurate. People don't generally print computer checks anymore. Some people still do. We have a few still doing it, but in general, people use EFT.
Right, thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Angela. You haven't missed anything, really. So.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Can you mute your microphone, but unmute if you've got any questions, please.
Microphone. Right. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah. So they've updated the terminology to reflect the fact that we don't really do that many computer check runs. It's the exact same functionality as you've always had. So you can still, if you're not actually doing EFT, but you do generate a dummy computer check run in order to generate remittances, for example, you can still continue to do all that. So they haven't taken away any functionality. They've just changed the naming slightly. Okay, but I will, when I'm in a window, I will tell you if it's called something different in the earlier versions. So with that, just a quick talk, just a quick word on the setup of our creditors. Within our creditor setup, the fields that are applicable to our payment runs are obviously remittances. So the remit to is where the address that a remittance will go to. So because we can have multiple addresses in GP, you can have more than one. You could have a remittance possibly going to a head office. Maybe that's where the payments are processed, rather than the local office, which might be the one you normally deal with. Another field that's relevant is the email. So for emailing remittances, within the internet addresses box in here, this is where you set up your email addresses. Okay, so you've got 2CC and VCC. It is not the internet information one down here. Okay, it's these ones up here. And again, if you're emailing remittances, and if it will let me into this, because I'm air gapped almost with this PC, the VPN I'm working on, I can't get out to the outside world. But yeah, so this is where you set up, you want your remittance to go. So this is the message I want to go with my remittance, and this is the format that it's going to go for. You can, within the setup, say that, well, I want purchase orders to go to a particular email address, and I want remittances to go to a different one. So there are ways to set up all that. So I'm going to just disable that and leave it for the moment. I won't be emailing the remittances. I'll be showing them on screen, but I won't be able to email from here because I'm locked. I'm not connected to the outside world. The other thing on the setup is EFT. So if somebody is set up for EFT, when that option is on the address button. So this middle section here, if I click on the address button, you'll see it's replicated in here. But the difference is I have an EFT bank. So what that means is you can have a different bank account associated with each of your addresses. Okay. Within the EFT bank setup, now this supplier is not set up for bank, but you will, depending on what you're using standards GP. Most people are using the enhanced EFT. You will have something here set up like other one, and depending on what you're doing, you might have, in Ireland we have this ticked on because we put the BIC into the SWIFT address, and the IBAN goes in the IBAN field. For BACS payments, we use bank account number and bank branch code, for instance. So it's all about what you're going to be using when you're doing EFT. And I'm going to say okay on that. If you're using the standard GP one, there's settings for files and so on your checkbooks, but I'm not going to go into that setup because, like I said, most of you are using the standard, the non-standard enhanced one. So that's more or less the setup on the creditor. But one small final thing, because I'm going to mention this when I'm doing my payment run. This field here, payment priority. So I don't know if any of you use payment priority. It can be useful. So let's say I don't have enough money in the bank to pay everybody. Do I put names in a hat to see who I'm going to pay? Not usually. What it would be is I could have a payment priority of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or ABC, whatever it is. And let's say payment priority 1, those are my suppliers that I have to pay on time. They will cut me off immediately, and it's stuff I can't do without. Payment priority 2, that might be somebody who I have a very long-standing relationship with. They don't like to be kept waiting, but they will give you a bit of leeway. And maybe payment priority 3 is, your brother-in-law, and you don't have to pay him all that quickly. He'll wait for it. He doesn't mind waiting. So when it comes to it, if I have to do my payment run and I don't have enough cash in the bank at the moment to pay everybody who's due, I can go in and say, well, listen, let's pay all the payment priority 1 people at least and get that done and see what we're going to do afterwards. So I just wanted to mention the payment priority in there. Any questions so far on the setup? No? Thanks, Alex. Okay, so the actual payments then themselves. So I would always go from the batches window. Okay, some people will go straight to select checks, or if you're on the later version, build payment batch. The reason I go to the batches window is I can decide at this point whether I'm going to do EFT or computer checks. Okay, it will default to EFT if I go via this window. If you go via the build payment batch, it will default to check. So that's just something to remember, okay? Or the select checks, and you create the batch from there, it will default to check. So let's create a batch in here. So my batch is going to be, I'm going to call it training May. Now the origin is computer check, because even though Microsoft in their cleverness have changed the names of select checks, billed checks, print checks. They didn't change it in here. Okay, someone forgot. Okay, as soon as I pick computer check, you see the payment method becomes available. Okay, now I'm not going to do EFT because I can't generate an EFT file from here and send it out. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to use check, but the process is identical. Okay, the screen itself, if you notice when I go back to EFT down here, I've got a file format. So I need to pick whether it's a domestic or a foreign format. And that is what triggers the layout that goes to the bank. Okay, so let me just go back to check. So that's not available on check because I'm not sending something to the bank. When I click on transactions from here, it will give me a number of options. So build payment batch, or in your case, if you're on an older version, select checks, edit payment batch, edit vendor payment, or print payments. I'm going to go through these in order, but you don't have to go through all of these when you're doing your check run. Okay, so build payment batch is useful if I don't know exactly what I'm paying. I would suggest that nowadays most people would have a list of invoices they're paying, so you mightn't go through this way. But let's say you work for a semi-state organization and you have to pay everybody who's due, so you don't trigger prompt payments of good penalties. So I'm going to do the build batch. So within here, I have a number of options in here. And I can set up a number of restrictions in here. So I can say, well, let's say I'm going to go where my payment priority is 1, like I suggested there, and insert the restriction. Now, since GP 2016, you can have multiple restrictions. The earlier versions, you could only have 1. But you can have multiple restrictions, not of the same type, okay? But you can have multiple restrictions of different types in here. So if I do payment priority 1 here, and I can build my batch, but let's run through the other options on the screen. So over here, payment option ID is a new one in this version of GP. And what that allows me to do is, let's say I do an expenses run every month, and I pay everybody who happens to be in the creditor class employee expenses. Okay, so I can go in here and select my class, put it in my restrictions, and save my payment option ID. But let me do my priority one. So my payment priority 1. So I am going to type in a payment option. Now, when it says payment option ID, if you've used the reporting in GP, option ID means my name for this. So it's like an Excel file name, a Word file name, and so on. So I'm just going to call it priority. Priority 1. Do I want to add this default ID? So priority 1 creditors. What that means, and it's not a huge time saving, but it's a small time saving, is that anytime I come in here now into this window, I can just go in and select my payment option of priority 1, and it does the restrictions for me. So it might not be that great if you only got the 1 restriction. It's not a huge time saving. But if you had a number of restrictions, you know, so let's say you pay employee expenses, but you got maybe manager expenses, staff expenses, contractor expenses. You might pay 3 different ones in 3 different payment runs. So you might want to split them up that way with other qualifiers in there like date or amount or payment priority. Down here then, 1 payment per use vendor option. Now, this side of the world, do 1 payment per creditor. I believe, according to a customer I have in the US, they do 1 payment per invoice, which seems a bit excessive. And certainly, if you were still using computer checks and with the price of checks, seems mad. Maybe it's to make people pay more often. But in this side of the world, we generally say 1 payment per creditor. This box down here it's a bit of a mouthful. Automatically apply existing unapplied. What does that mean? So if I click my build batch and it goes and it checks all the accounts that are priority 1, if it finds unapplied payments or credit notes or returns, do I want to take them into account when I calculate the amount due? Okay, so that's what that means. So I can go and I can say, well, I want to take into account credit notes but not payments, because if there's a payments in the question, Connor?
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
How you doing? Yeah, just actually, I was just on a call before I came onto this, and we were talking about this where we had a credit note that we wanted to exclude from the payment run. But so this box here, if we have credit notes selected, it will bring in the credit notes automatically and apply them to the creditor account. So the ultimate the amount that's being paid to the creditor is less.
Yes.
But if I post my credit note into GP and then apply it to a particular invoice, how does that? Should I untick this box, or how does that deal with that?
It has no impact because it only, if you look at this word here, unapplied, it's only going to apply unapplied ones. So it won't touch anything else.
And so when I go to bill my batch, will that credit note that I've applied to the invoice be represented on the remittance and the
That's the next section. I'm going to
okay,
explain more.
grand.
Yeah,
I'll put my hand down.
no problem at all. So, right, so this just means what am I taking into account? So when I look at the account, am I just going to look at invoices? Or am I going to base my calculation on invoices, less payments, less credit notes, less returns that haven't been applied yet? Okay, so will it apply them based on the rules you have set up overall, say the oldest date or the oldest number? Okay, down here is what Connor is talking about. So on my remittance, and this is something when we would have set up computer checks first, way back in the dark ages, for people, and they may have been doing payment runs, the very first remittance would have pages and pages of information on it. Okay, and that was because of this section here, print previously applied documents. So the purpose of that is, it's where, as Connor said, I've got an invoice of, let's say, £100, and a credit came in for 50 of that, and I've applied it off, so the outstanding balance is £50. When I do my payment run, do I want to print previously applied documents on my payment run? What that means is anything I have applied since my last payment run, do I want it included on the remittance? So it's almost like a statement. So it's a way of, now some people like this, some people don't. It's a way, I suppose, of saying, well, I'm sending you 50 against this invoice. The reason I'm sending you 50 is because I already took 50 from this credit note you gave me. So it doesn't include your last computer checks or EFT run. What all it will include is anything since the last computer checks run to do with paying off. Does that make sense, Connor?
Yeah, I think that's clear then.
Yeah.
On the previous section, the automatically apply existing unapplied payments.
Yeah.
Is that where you've partially paid an invoice?
It's where you've put up a manual payment and you haven't applied it against a particular invoice. So let's say it was a prepayment or something like that that was sitting on the account waiting to be paid, waiting to be applied off against an invoice.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so it's basically, when I look at the account, if I find anything that's a credit document, do I take it into account? So that's where you would say no, that's a prepayment and I want to exclude it because I'm waiting for the invoice related to that to come in.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Connor. Anybody else any questions on that? No? Okay. The last section over here then is take non-qualifying discounts. What that means is, and again, my experience is that the vast majority of people in Ireland and the UK don't use discounts in their payment terms. But if you did have discounts in your payment terms, so I get a 5% discount if I pay within 20 days. Well, let's say it's 25 days. Do I want to take the 5% discount anyway? The system allows me to do that, even though your supplier might not, but you can take your chances. The next one then is pay only minimum. And thankfully, I've gone past that stage in my credit card life. But let's say quite a few years ago when I got a credit card first, it may have been a thing that I paid only the minimum at the end of the month rather than clearing the balance like the good citizen and bank customer I am now. So pay only minimum means if I look at the vendor or creditor account and I see that they have a minimum payment when making a payment, will I just pay the minimum or am I going to pay everything? Okay, so that's what that's about. The apply date then, you can see the apply date is a required field. You might say, well, why is that? The apply date is important if you're doing multi-currency payments because the apply date is the date that the exchange gain or loss is calculated at. Because obviously when you apply a payment against an invoice, the date you apply it, if there's an exchange gain or loss, you realize that when you clear the invoice in full, and it's what date that realization is posted to the general ledger. Generally, that is always going to be the same date as your payment run, but you have the option to make it a different date if you wish. So any questions on that screen? No? Okay, I'm going to build my batch. So when I click build batch, do I want to save changes to my payment option? I do, so that it'll be there again. So it's building the batch, and it looks like there might not be anything in it because there's no, I don't owe anything to anybody who's payment priority 1. So that's fine. And that actually is fine because it means I can show you the next window anyway. If I wanted to add more payments into this batch, I would go up, oh, it has, look, I've got 1.2 million. That's rather a lot, isn't it? I can add to the batch in here. So I can add another restriction and get it to do a kind of a bulk list for me. Most people, however, use the edit payment batch screen or edit checks screen. I like this screen because it allows me to see who has been paid and what's being paid. Okay, so I can go in and say, oh no, good Lord, I don't want to pay everybody. So I'm going to untick everybody. This will take a second. And then I'm going to just pay Ace Travel. Why didn't it untick everybody? Okay, it's unticked everybody now. So, look up. So that's how I'm going to pay Allenson. Okay. So this allows you instead to go through and I don't know what's going on with this. Yeah, continue. Sorry, I'm going to unapply a whole heap of them because otherwise I'm going to end up with continue. I don't know why it didn't unapply all of them there, but yeah. They keep moving up. You don't have to scroll down the screen. So I'm going to leave a few of them in there. Okay. So all of these down here, I'm not paying anything. All the ones that are zeros. Now within those, I can say, okay, so what am I paying for Ace Travel? So let's say I'm not going to pay this last one here, the Christmas Eve one. So I'm not going to pay that one. And that one's obviously on hold because it wasn't selected. And I'm not going to pay the 605, but I'll pay those two. And let's see, this training one has 68,000 on it. So that seems, again, rather a lot. So I'll get rid of a couple of those and so on. Okay. One of the things here you notice is this little box here. That tells me that Ace Travel, remember we went into the bank details screen. Ace Travel has EFT details set up. So it's saying, do you realize you're doing a computer check for an EFT? Now, if this was an EFT batch, it would only allow me to select people who have EFT. Yes, Connor?
Sorry, I feel like I'm holding the whole show up.
Yeah, questions are good.
I guess our process that we follow normally is where somebody goes in and actually takes the invoices and documents under a particular creditor off hold and then builds the batch. But I guess this is a different way to do it, where you build a batch for everybody and then you can actually go through and determine what you want to pay. Is that kind of correct?
Exactly. Or you don't have to build the batch at all. You can go directly into this window and not have anybody in there and say, okay, so who am I paying? I'm going to pay M. Hans for the training Sharon did. You know, so you can go in and do that. So you don't have to go into the build batch at all.
Okay.
So if I show you that, so let me delete this batch and show you. So it's training. So let me delete that one. And we'll go again. So training May. And again, I'll do computer check. I'm going to make it checks instead of EFT. When I go to transactions this time, I'm not going to go to build payment batch. I'm going to go to edit payment batch. It brings me directly to that window. And then I can say, okay, so I've got these 10 invoices here in front of me that I'm paying. Who are the creditors? And you can go and you can say, okay, so Ace Travel. Now, when I tick beside somebody, it'll pay everything it can. So unless it's on hold. Ace Travel. So let me just untick those two. And I also want to pay Allenson. So I could click on Allenson and just go in and tick. And advanced, if I just click directly on them instead of clicking on the box, I can go in if I'm only going to be paying one, say. And once I then know which ones I have, as you see, the box total is increasing each time I tick something or untick something. increases. So this, like I said, this will be my preferred way. Way back in the day when I did purchasing, this is I would have preferred this window.
Okay, great,
because
thanks.
you don't have to go in then and start deselecting things. Okay. Anybody else, or is that okay? That's okay. Okay, perfect. So, like I said, over here, this little, I don't know if you can see at the screen. I couldn't change the screen resolution, guys. I don't know why. But this little box here, this little envelope means that this person has EFT. So if this was an EFT batch, I would not be able to tick advanced or Allenson. It would say they're not set up for EFT. Okay, so that might even be more useful for you when you're doing this, because you'll know then whether a new creditor has been set up and we've got an invoice for them and we want to pay them by EFT, but we haven't got the bank details. That'll tell you pretty quickly, won't it? So that was our build batch, and now this is our edit payment batch. There are two other ones down here. Edit vendor payments is another one that's optional. Okay, and this screen, when I click on it, looks exactly like your manual payment screen. Okay, so you could within here say, okay, so I could make changes here. I could put in a comment, something like that. I could go in and change the applies if I want. I haven't seen anybody use this window, I'll be honest with you, because you can do everything within here. Okay, but it is there if you did want to change it or if you wanted to delete something. This one here, then, the print payments, that button is available here, and it's also on my menu over here, and it is the next step. So regardless of whether I go build batch, print payments, go edit batch, print payments, or go to my batches and print payments, it's the next step. Once I go into the print payments window, one difference on this that you'll see that you don't see on EFT is separate remittance is automatically ticked, and this print alignment form and checks is grayed out. That's the only difference. Okay. So once I'm in here, I can print an edit list if I wish to see what's in my batch. So let's say I print my edit list, make sure that there's no, errors or anything in there. There shouldn't be, and just so you can see what's being paid and so on. And then I can go ahead and print. Once I click this print button, I'm now sort of in the process of posting. So if you understand posting in GP, once you click the post button in GP, you can't go back. Unplugging your computer won't fix it. It won't cancel it or undo it. There's no cancel. Once I click print in here, I'm now in the process. It's kind of a staggered process of posting, but you can no longer delete the batch. So the way I deleted the batch there where I did the build batch, once I hit print in here, so before I do that, if I call my batch up here, you can see it's available. I can select it in this window. I can go down here. I can make changes. I can print. I could delete if I wanted. But once I go in and I print, okay, so separate remittance, and I hit that print button, it goes to the next stage. Now, again, with EFT, you won't get this window, but because I said computer checks, it doesn't allow me to cancel this report. It's saying I have to print the computer check. So let's close that. This next button will come up regardless of which we're doing, EFT or print checks. We are now posting, okay? So if I was to look up the batch in here, I can now see training May is at the stage of check printing. I cannot select it in this window because it's at the stage of check printing. It says the next step is post payments. Okay, so I can no longer delete. I can no longer back out as such. So within here, I have a couple of options under my process. So post payments is the next logical step. If I'm happy with everything. Print stub alignment, not really an issue anymore. That's if any of you are old enough to remember dot matrix printers and printing computer checks on them. That's what that was for. Reprint payments. So that would be where I, sent my checks. The printer jammed and the checks didn't print, so I've got to reprint them. Or I had the wrong printer selected, or I had the wrong paper in, whatever it may be. You can choose to reprint. Or let's say I've gone completely wrong. I chose the wrong bank account and I've got to undo. The only way I can undo now is to void the payments. Okay, that's the only way to stop the processing. Okay, so I can't delete the batch, but I can void. Voiding will do the same thing as voiding on the transactions menu does. It will leave the transaction on the creditor account with an asterisk beside it. Now, you don't have to void all of your payments. You could void one of them. You could say, oh, I wasn't supposed to pay one of those people. So let's void this one here for advanced, okay? So I'm going to void that one. and I'll show you what it looks like on advanced account, and I'm going to process. So that check has been voided. So I'm back to the screen again. So what do you want to do next, Sharon? Do you want to post? Do you want to void some more? Do you want to reprint? So I'm going to post. Now I could say I want to process later. What does that do? Okay, it's not stopping the posting. I'm still mid-post. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I leave it there for a year, it's still waiting to be posted and finished. And again, the same as we saw with our printing stage, if I try to select it in this window, it's saying, check printing, you can't. You have to go to the post payments window. So I go to my post payments, or if you're on an older version, post checks. I'll select the batch. It shows me any batches that are at that stage. It doesn't show me anything else. So I'm going to post, and I'm going to hit process. So it's processed those now. So the next piece is the remittances. So this is the important bit. So the alignment form, again, that's back to the old dot matrix printers where you had to print an alignment form rather than wasting your check paper or your remittance paper. But I'm going to go to remittance form. Now, these won't email because, like I said, I'm not connected to the outside world. So I'm just going to print them. I'm not going to actually email them. But when I hit process here, and I'm going to print the template, let it go to screen. So I should have 2 remittances in here because I voided one of my payments. The Word templates are a little bit slower than using the standard GP reports, but obviously the benefit of looking an awful lot nicer. And yours, probably most of yours are customized for you. So this is the bog standard one out of the box, just with the enhanced logo on. Unless someone's gone in and used my GP and changed it. Now it's not this slow normally, it's just that having everything on GoToMeeting does tend to slow things down. So there's my 2 remittances. And you can see a fatal flaw straight away on the out of the box one. It's got the American spelling of check. So yeah, we usually change them just to say remittance. But yeah, so those are my remittances. If I'd said to email and the email was valid, it would have gone out to them. I can again process later. Okay. Now that's something that if I was coming out to write to customize your remittance for you, I would save this. So I would process later, make my changes, print them, process later, make some more changes, and so on until I got it right. So if it was a thing that there was a problem, so let's say I had tried to email and it wouldn't email because there was no email addresses, I could process later, go fix things, and then come back here and go back into it. But which window do I go in? It's not the post payments because I've gone past that stage, so I can't see it there. So if you go and look at the batch, it will tell you what stage it's at. It's at remittance processing. Again, if I try to select it, no, not having it. So I go down here then to my process remittance window, do a lookup, and there's my batch. So I can keep on processing remittances as long as I want, as many as I want. Once I'm finished with my remittances, I need to post. And this is to complete my posting. Because remember, we are mid-posting. Even though we've dragged it out through different windows, we are mid-posting. You can't back out. And I'm going to process. Yes, I've already printed it. Thank you. So I'm going to print these reports to screen. You may or may not print these. You may or may not see these because they can be turned off in the background for you. But I'm going to print all of them so you can see what they're doing. Now, it's printing. You're seeing percentage complete, 33%, it'll go to 66. And you're saying, hang on, there was only 2 payments. But remember the void. It did the void as well. So here's my checks posting journal. And that will look like the edit list we did at the beginning. And it's saying advanced was voided. So it's including that advanced was voided. The next one then is the distribution details. So this is what's hitting the GL in detail. And the next one is the summary of that report, which is what's hitting the GL in summary. Then we have the list of computer checks. So these are the checks that were generated and printed. Because remember, we did print the one for advanced. We voided it, but we did print one. So we have to show that that's been used. And there's my posting journal, but it's recorded that it's been voided. That's the process of going through to remittance. Any questions on that? Everyone's okay? No one's stuck over my accent. Connor will be fine with my accent, but if anybody else is, sometimes I speak too quickly. No, everyone's okay?
Sharon,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to cover the actual email functionality later on. we're on GP 2015 at the
Okay.
moment. This is kind of, I guess there's two things. If you're using the email functionality, we had problems with a new person, accounts payable, coming in, setting up the email functionality in the email settings. So I don't know if you could talk a bit about that, but maybe that's later on. And the
It's
other
not.
thing is,
Yeah. Go
yeah,
on.
the other thing is, I think it's we're at the stage now where we have to upgrade or lose the email functionality because we're on GP 2015. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering what's the minimum version we have to go to allow us to continue use that past October.
The minimum version is 18.2, Connor, which is not very
Okay.
generous of Microsoft at all. So you have to be on 18.2 or 18.3, and they're basically a service pack apart. So it's much the same. So for those of you who don't know what Connor is talking about, an email will have gone out either to your super users or your IT. GP uses Microsoft Exchange in the background to send out, for most of you, especially if you're using a generic email address. It sends out all of the emailing within the system. It looks at the generic email address to send from, and it sends your email. It routes everything through Exchange. So it's connected to Microsoft Exchange. Microsoft Exchange has the ability to do two-factor authentication. When you go to log in to your email via GP using Exchange, and let me see, I should be able to trigger the message. Oh, that's typical. It'll work. It'll work when I'm not looking for it not to work, and it doesn't work when I look for it to work. Set up company. Okay, you get this box, and it asks you to log in to Exchange. So basically what it's doing in the background, it's logging you into Exchange online, and it's accessing your email. Okay, now Microsoft introduced two-factor authentication, which you're probably all familiar with, where you might have an app on your phone and you've got to add a code and all this kind of stuff, or authenticate with your fingerprint or password. GP and Exchange together can't handle that. Okay, so GP doesn't have a way to provide that information from Exchange, to request it from you and process it back. Okay, it only has the single sign-on. That was never a problem because you didn't have to have two-factor turned on in Exchange. From the end of September this year, so start of October, Exchange will force you to use two-factor. So there's no way to not use two-factor, which means they needed to change GP and all their other products that interface with Exchange to allow the two-factor authentication, to process two-factor authentication. They made the decision to only do it on the current and one version back of GP. And the current version is 2018.3. So if you're not on 2018.2 or 2018.3, basically your emailing is not going to work. Now, there was a mail shot obviously sent out to all customers to let them know this was happening. It's out of our control. It's out of your control. Connor, for you, there might be a workaround because I don't think you've got any VBA on site. VBA is a little programming language where you might have had changes made to your system. If you don't have VBA, you may be able to get around it and use a 32-bit version of Outlook and do it that way. It's not supported, but you could use Mappy instead of using Exchange and do it that way with a local email profile that you're already signed into. Okay, so, but it doesn't work with VBA, and a lot of sites, particularly in the UK, have VBA.
I don't think we use VBA. I think we might have that workaround currently, but
Right.
I think for the workflow as well, I think from October, the internal workflow in GP was going to stop.
Yeah, they really have. It's a bit like when, Connor, you might remember, actually you probably won't remember because you're probably not old enough to remember, but in Ireland, I've been working with GP since '98, and back in 2002 with the introduction of the euro, everybody had to be on version 6 of GP. And we had lots of people on version 3.5 and 4 and 5 and 5.1. And they had to be on version 6 in order to be able to do the euro. And we had a whole load of upgrades that had to be done in order to be able to triangulate for the euro. And they've kind of done the same thing again. It's kind of like, well, sorry, you have to be on the latest version. We're not going to backwards compatible it. So yeah,
And
unfortunately, yeah. Go ahead.
Is it a big leap from 2015 to 2018 or GP18? Is there a number of upgrades required to get you there, or is it sort of one big jump?
I don't know the upgrade path, but I suspect, depending on the version, there's two versions. There's 2015 and 2015 R2. Then there's 2016 R2. Okay. There's 2016 and 2016 R2. Then there's 2018. Then there's the GP18, if you like, and then that 18.1, 18.2, 18.3. So I'm not sure, Connor. I would imagine there's at least one in between hop. So you probably have a double hop, if you like. You probably have to go 2015 to 2018 and 2018 to this. Maybe, I don't know, but Daryl will be able to tell you more on that.
Okay, thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Can I ask a question, please? Yeah, this was something that I was wanting to know was how to do the email addresses, because at the moment we only just print it to the screen and we do a PDF. We don't actually use it, email addresses, and it's something that we would like to do, but we do have the old version as well. We've 2015 also.
Right, okay, so what I'd say to you is you could put a bit of effort into setting it up now, but it's not going to work in 4 months.
Right, okay.
Unless you yeah.
Right, okay. But we could, I mean, over the next couple of months, I could kind of set it up, but it's not really going to be any benefit to us, really, no. Just keep going the way we're doing it.
It's not, well, the thing is, 2015, you're probably looking at upgrading anyway at some point, because it's it's out of mainline support.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably something we should have done at the beginning, but we didn't really, we just do PDF, but it's fine.
When you do PDF, Angela, do you do it from the template? So do you have a template?
Yeah, well, see the screen that you come up with your remittance, we would just like each whatever one we wanted to send the remittance to, we would just save that page and use that as a remittance. But we need to do it one off. Say we've got 40 payments, we need to save each page like 40 times.
Let me show you then. Okay, so is it okay with everyone else if I go on to this? There's only a couple of other things I'm going to show you on the payment run. It's to do with approvals and stuff like that. But let me quickly go in and show you remember I said about the voiding on advanced. I just want to show you that quickly. And then if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to talk about the emailing for a little while, if that's okay. Let me know if it's not. No? Everyone's okay with it? Okay. So just to quickly show you that voided transaction we did on advanced. It automatically goes into history. Down at the bottom here. That's it there. Remember 20116? It's got an asterisk beside it. So an asterisk means it's a document that existed. It's been deleted. The effects of it have been deleted. It's been undone in the general ledger. It's been undone on the creditor account. But because it existed, we have a note of it here. Okay, so anything with an asterisk, it's a note almost. Because if it didn't do that, if it allowed you to just void something and get rid of it off the system, what's to stop you printing yourself a check every time the supplier run is done? Okay, so that's why that's there. So just on the emailing, there's a couple of things that you need when you're using emailing in GP. So let's concentrate specifically on remittances. The first thing is the Word templates have to be activated and they have to be configured. So Angela, do you have GP open?
Hold on, no, not at the moment. I can open it for you.
Yeah, if you could do that. So, and for anybody else who wants to check, if you don't know if you're using this or not, if you go to reports and template maintenance, if you have permission to do that.
Yeah.
Is everybody else, Sharon and Alex, do you guys email remittances at the moment?
Yeah, we do. And we've been having issues.
Right, okay. They did do a test, Microsoft recently, they did a test kind of turn on two-factor for everyone.
Yeah, we don't at the moment.
Right, okay.
But I think that's possibly because of an issue with it rather than not wanting to.
Okay. And do either of you...
Sorry, I
do you
was
know
just going to say, I'm a noob, so you have to bear with me.
All right, right, okay, okay. Do you know what versions you're on, Sharon and Alex, as well?
I think we're on 15 as well.
Okay.
Well, I just had a look at about Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013, and it says we're on 12.001745, but I'm sure that can't be right.
Okay. Probably is.
Oh, here you go. Maybe that's why the remittance isn't working.
Possibly. How are you getting on, Angela?
Yeah, so what do you want me to go into? Reports?
Yeah, so if you go to reports and template maintenance.
Template, where am I right to? I don't know where reports. What was that again after reports?
Template maintenance, second from the bottom.
Right, you got it, yep,
Now, when you go in there, beside report name, if you click on the drop down beside report name, can you see anything in there?
Not just says more reports, but I don't see anything.
Okay, so click on more reports.
Maybe I'm not authorised. Right, okay.
No, you can in here. So when you go to more reports,
right.
I want you to change the series purchasing and the status to modified.
Modified, okay. Right.
Do you see check remittance in your list there?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay, so I want you to click on it and click select.
Select, okay. Okay, yep,
Now,
and
do you see anything
in here? It says JWF remittance.
Right, okay, well then that means you have a modified remittance that you are using. And when it's in the bottom screen, does it say it's assigned to 5 companies?
Yeah, it does, yeah. It says to the 3 companies, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so you are using the templates. Okay, so that's the first step. So the next step then with the emailing is the overall setup on the, now you may not have permission to do this, but within administration and the setup menu. Administration
and setup,
Yeah, in email settings, so you enable it and then you go to message setup. Now, it's not going to
enable it and then you go into, sorry?
Message setup. So when you go to the company menu, email message setup, and have a look at what's in there. So this is just the message that goes with the remittance. So if I send a remittance, so let's create a new one, call it remittance. And because you could have different remittances for different people. So you might have employee remittance, suppliers have a different one. So within here, you can go in and you can say, okay, so this is a purchasing one. What document type? It's for my remittance. And what's the subject line? So your EFT payment made today might be the subject. And then in the body, you type what you would have in there. So, you know, please find attached remittance for the EFT payment made to you today. Please allow 3 days. If you have any queries, contact whoever, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, your email, yeah.
Okay, so once that's set up, now again, it's not going to let me do this because I don't have connection. Once that is set up, on your creditors then, so if I go back to my purchasing, each of your creditors is going to have an email address set up. So if I go in here to Ace Travel and I put in my email address, now you can have multiple email addresses. It's the same rules apply as within an Outlook email. You can put in a semicolon between them and add multiple addresses. You can have some in the CC field or the BCC field. Once you have an email address and save it again, it's asking me to log in, but I can't because we have two-factor authentication. So you can enter your email option and you tick credit or remittance, you select the message that you wanted, and then you say whether you want it going as a docx or a PDF. So it's a PDF. And OK. And that's it configured.
That's it. But you need to get into admin setup first, yeah?
You do need to turn it on,
Right.
start your message, and then each creditor needs email addresses, and then you need to go to the email.
Right.
Yeah. And then that
Right,
should
okay.
go.
Right,
Yeah.
no worries. It's admin setup. The email, you enable it, and then you do the scan.
Yeah, and then within the creditor, you do it as well. Yeah.
Right, okay, that's great. I'll speak to my financial director and hopefully I can do that. But as you say, it's going to be turned off in a couple of months, so whether it's worth it.
Yeah, it's a problem with Exchange Online. If you don't have Exchange Online, I think it's not a problem.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Sharon. So basically, as of October this year, Microsoft are disabling the basic and legacy authentication support within Office 365. So it's coming from Exchange Online. So if you're running Dynamics version 18.2 or lower, emailing out a GP via Exchange won't be supported and will stop working in October. So it is definitely recommended that you upgrade. It's not even pushing from us from a sales side of thing. It's literally Microsoft is saying it will not work unless you're on a later version. So a lot of you seem to be on 2015. So as Sharon said, that's out of mainstream support anyway. So it's well worth having a chat with your account manager just to obviously get a quote to see how much it would be to take you to the new version. But it's obviously a great feature to have. But yeah, it's only on the later versions that it will work for you.
Jenna, am I correct in saying that if you're not using Exchange Online, if it's Exchange on-prem or something else, it will continue to work?
Yes, I think that's right. Don't quote me on it. I don't want to receive loads of abuse following this training session, but yeah, I'm pretty sure if it's on-prem or anything else, then you're okay. It's the Exchange Online that he's coming out of. But it is obviously better to be on the latest version anyway, because you get your new features and new functionality. But yeah, for this specific issue, then you have to be on a later version if you want it to work after October.
Just a quick question. Will that impact statements that we'd send out from our sales ledger at all, or is that completely separate?
No, Jen, it's not the same.
It's not.
Okay, so the statements you're sending out, I think is it 2013 or 2013 or 2, Alex?
We're on 13.
Okay, so I'm guessing if you were to go into a customer account and go into the options, I'm guessing this section down here is active on one of your customers.
I'll take a look. Hang on, give me just a second.
Just to explain to everyone else, in GP 2010 up to 2013 or 1, there was no functionality to email statements the way we currently do on the later version, the way we're doing the remittance, the way I just showed Angela. There was no functionality to do with statements. I don't know why. So they had this other bit of code that they put in to send email statements. And it requires Adobe Writer in order to work, which is why not many people had it. So if you're using that functionality, Alex, I don't know if it will work or not is the answer on that one. It may, because what it does is it prints the statements to PDFs.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, so you contact your account manager, I think, would be the best person to check. First of all, is that how you're doing it? And second of all, is that going to work with the exchange difference? I don't think it would be effective because I don't think it goes directly to exchange.
Understood. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. No problem at all. Does that explain the email and the emailing situation, everyone? Is that okay?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah. And if you are going to upgrade, get on it sooner rather than later, because I can tell you there's about 13 upgrades already come in. So yeah, and we've only a limited number of consultants, and some of them work weekends, but most don't. So yeah. Okay, so that's our chat there about our emailing. What I wanted to talk to you about is something that I've seen over the years with payment runs, where the person doing the payment run isn't the person that signs off on it. So what I would have seen is a user goes in, they do the batch, they create their batch of payments, and then they print an edit list or a list they might have in Excel or something like that. They walk to the office of the person who does approve it. They leave it in there for them to review. They have to wait for them to review it, and they can't continue with the payment run until that's been approved, and they have it back from the person approving. And that might mean, they'll send an email, they might make a phone call, they might go walk down the hall again, knock on the door and go, have you checked that yet, please? I need to make the payments, and so on. It's also a waste of paper. What you can do in, I think it came in GP 2016 or 2, is workflows, and some of you already have workflows in other areas, but they introduced a workflow for remittance, for check runs. So what does that workflow do? What that workflow does, and if I just go in and turn it on. Now, workflow is not my area. This was set up for me by my colleague, Michael Boyle, who's fantastic at workflows. And if you do want more information on them, I would recommend having a chat with him. So within here on my workflow maintenance, he created this one for me on my payables batch approval. So I think it's under payments. Oh, don't say it's gone because I reinstalled. It's gone. Okay, I'm going to have to get him to do it again. But what it works as, and Connor already has workflow, so you're familiar with these. What will happen is on my batch window, before I can go through to the print checks, okay, what will happen on my batch window is a section will appear here between this top section and the word batch ID that will allow me to submit for approval. So what that does is I click the button to submit for approval. Now, approval will say it's all set up with who does what, who approves up to what level, and so on. And that's all done for you. But you as a user and me as a user, we click the button to send for approval. And it generates an email. And that email goes out to, and I should have copies of it here somewhere. Too much tidying up. Can you hear the rain outside? We just had thunder and lightning here. So it sends an email that looks like this. And I might be able to open it as administrator, or maybe not. It may not open for me. Yeah, the rain is heavy enough to set off an alarm, so I just close the window. Oh, it's actually hailstones. So it sends an email, and within that email you can attach the edit list, and the edit list can be modified for you, so you could have everything on one line if you wanted, and they get to review that edit list. Yeah, it's not. Cancel that. Okay, so it has opened it. So this is the most basic email. This hasn't been modified in any way. Okay, so it says you have been assigned a task for this batch, and you can approve or reject from in here. So they don't have to go into GP or anything like that. And they can open the edit list. This won't open because of a problem with Word. But the edit list will open. You know, the one we saw on the screen? It will open the edit list. It will show them the list of people who are being paid, the amount they're being paid, and the invoices that are being paid. Okay, and because that's customizable, you can get it to look any way you want. You can put in information from the invoices to say what it was for. You know, what GL code did that hit? Was it for training? Was it for a new computer? What was it for? So they can go in and they can review. Now, they can't reject individual payments. They can reject the batch or accept the batch. Okay, if they approve, a box will pop up to say, you know, do you want to put in a message? You don't have to, and you say okay. And what happens in GP on the batch, it unlocks the batch, if you like. When you go back into your batch, you'll see that it's gone green, and I can now continue on and go through and do all we did today with the print and do the remittances and everything else. Okay. If they reject it, you will go in and you can set it up that you get a notification if it's rejected. you'll say, okay, they've rejected that. If they click reject, again, the box pops up, and in there in the comment, they should put in something like, I don't want you to pay Enhance for that invoice, or whatever it may be, okay? Or you can pay the enhanced one, but don't pay that other one. So you can then, when you go into your batch, it will be red. There'll be a red flag on it to say you can't go any further with this batch because you cannot process an unapproved batch once the approvals are set up, okay? So it locks it until you go and make the changes, and then you will resubmit it for approval and do the same thing again. So it cuts out you having to print that edit list, walk down the hall, hand it to that other person, wait for them to tick it and read it and go back through it. And you're doing everything electronically. And I think this is a great feature. Like I said, it only came in GP 2016 R2. And I think it's a great feature. I obviously get excited too easily. But it's something that I have seen. I worked in payables when I started doing accounts in the 90s. Before some of you were born probably. That's what I was doing. I was doing purchase ledger, and this would have been, made things so much easier. And it also facilitates, our working from home and things like that, and chasing people up on it. They've got you can set up reminders within the workflows, everything like that. So I would encourage you to have a think about that. So if you are, if you are doing your computer check runs, if you do look at upgrading, if you are going to upgrade, that's one of the things I would get set up, is particularly this one, because if you are the person that does the processing, it would be nice to have that there, and you can see who it was sent to, when it was sent, they can get a reminder. All these things are in there. Does that make sense? Yes, Connor. Go ahead. I can see you've unmuted, but I can't hear anything. Do you want to type into the chat box, Connor? Okay, do you want to type the question into the...
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I hear you, Judith. Hi, Judith. Oh, you're muted again. Can invoices be attached to email so people can view the list of payments? Check against individual invoice documents.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Judith, I can hear you.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
I said I'm not quite sure. I think we're using GP18, I think. I'm not sure. Have we got that option on there?
Yes, if you're GP18, you do.
Okay.
It does need to be set up for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Connor has asked, can invoices be attached to the email so people can view the list of payments and check against individual invoice documents? I don't know, Connor, is the answer to that one. It's something I could check out for you. Certainly, let's see, let me think about this. So if we have, so let's see, we're looking at the payment. If the invoices were attached to the payment, you could send them. Yeah, if they're, okay, so I suppose two things. If you want, the invoice isn't in GP, we'll say, to send, okay? But, go back into GP. If on the batch itself, you have attachments in here on the batch itself, I don't see why you couldn't send them, okay? Because there is a function, let me just get another batch up. So that's the manual payment one, doesn't really matter which one. If I go in here to the attach, there's a tick box in here to say whether or not I want something to go in email. So I think it should do it if you attach the scanned invoices in here, okay? But let's say the scanned invoices were attached when the invoice was entered and posted. Then those ones, I don't think they will be available because this is a payment you're looking at. Now, that's not to say you couldn't do something to make them available, But certainly, if you attach it in here, there is a tick box to say I want it included in email. So I don't see why it couldn't. But I think possibly if you can, Daryl will be able to organise a session with Michael Boyle if it was something that you wanted to look at. Is that okay, Connor? Good. Okay. Judith, did you have another question?
No, I don't.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
I think I wanted the bit on remittances, but I've missed that because I only saw the email probably about 15 minutes ago.
You will get the recording, Judith. So we didn't have very many questions around the remittances. So you will be getting the recording at the end of this. So you should be able to follow that. I think it must have been clear because nobody asked anything. So hopefully it should be okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Connor, you will have the payables batch workflow, but I don't know if you can do it on the remittance. So you can do it on payables batches for posting and that kind of thing, but I don't know if you can do it for actual check payments. Okay. Oh, I think I got your. Did you say okay that time? I think I heard you. No, okay, not you then. Okay, so anyone else, any questions on that? Is that okay? No questions? Okay then. So we've looked at the setup we need on our creditors for emailing and for EFT. We've looked at how we create a batch, the different stages that the batch goes through on our journey to our payments. And Judith, would you mind muting?
Pardon?
Would you mind muting your microphone? We're getting some background noise.
Sorry.
No problem. So we looked at the journey through the different stages, how we build a batch using restrictions to look at everything, or my recommendation to use the edit window to go in and actually select the creditors and the invoices that you want to pay, and then how to go through the process of printing and the remittances and so on. And we also had a look at setting up emails, and we looked at using workflows and the way that can be. I didn't show you very much on it in fairness because it's disappeared on me, but if you want more information on workflows, we can certainly organize that for you. And I know Michael occasionally does some of these training sessions, or sometimes there's a free webinar on them as well. Jenna will know more about those and if there are any of those coming up. Any questions on anything we've done so far? No? Sharon, you have a question?
Sorry, it's easier to ask. When you said about Microsoft Exchange is what's causing the issue with the authentication with sending emails, and you said that if you were to use Microsoft, did you say if you were to use Chrome, it would stop that happening?
No, it's it's Exchange Online, so it's not Internet Explorer or anything like that. It's Exchange Online, so it's where your emails are handled. The vast majority of us using Microsoft Office and that now are using Exchange Online. There are some people that have on-premise versions, which may be able to bypass this, but Microsoft are turning on the two-factor authentication across the board. There's no opt-out from the 30th of September. So that's what the issue is. And the earlier versions of GP don't have the ability to handle that extra functionality. And they're not making it backwards compatible. So they're not going to make changes for versions that are out of support.
Right. So if you were to upgrade to 18, then you would still be able to continue?
Yes, 18.3, and you'll be able to continue. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Just an explanation for you guys as well on when we said mainline support, that the older versions like 2015 are no longer on mainline support. It doesn't mean you don't get support. So you still log your calls with our support desk as normal, and our guys will help you as they always do. What out of mainline support means that when we go to escalate to Microsoft, unless it's a known issue, they won't fix it. So let's say you find a bug in GP 2015. It's unlikely. It's been around for 7 years. If somebody else, you know, there's thousands and thousands of companies using this. So it's unlikely you would find a new bug. But if you did find a new bug, they will not do anything about that. The solution will be you must upgrade. That's what mainline support means. So any existing issues, we still have all the fixes for those. We still provide full support to you no matter what version you're on. But if there's something that you need to go to Microsoft that's not working because of the version you're on, they will not make that change. You have to upgrade. So that's what mainline support means. Okay. That's all really I have to show you guys today. I'll pass you back to Jenna shortly, but can I please ask you, we do have a survey that we send out at the end of the training. This does help us to decide, you know, how the training courses are structured, what subjects we cover. Do I speak too quickly? And if you want to say something nice, that's even better. But could you please fill in the survey and get it back to us? I'd really appreciate it. And if you do have any questions on anything we did today, and once you get your recording and that, if there's something you want to clarify, drop us an email. We'll have a look at it. Okay. So with that, if there's no more questions, I am going to pass you back to Jenna, and I'll bring our PowerPoint back up on screen so you can have a look at the courses that are coming up. So thank you very much, everyone, and especially those of you that asked questions. I think everybody spoke today, so that's a real turn up for the books for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. That was really good. And yeah, thanks everyone for your interaction. That was brilliant. Normally, sometimes Sharon can, bless her, has to be talking for an hour and a half straight on her own. She must be exhausted. So yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. This is just a list again of some further training and webinars we have coming up in May and June. We obviously encourage you to book onto those. The more knowledge you have, the better it is for your business. You can register there at www.m-enhance.com/events. And then, as Sharon just suggested with the feedback form, you can suggest other topics and how we structure them. So if you email, say hello at m-enhance.com, or get in touch with your account manager, or put it on the feedback form, that'd be brilliant. We do always have further resources on our website. We have recordings of webinars and fact sheets and lots of other resources on there. So if you go to www.m-enhance.com, there's loads on there to sink your teeth into. And as Sharon said, a survey will be sent shortly, and we really do appreciate that you fill it in and send it back. That'd be fantastic if you could. But no, thanks again for joining, and thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.